5 o'clock. The dark hasn't even begun to lift, and already the city is breathing smoke. Inside a cramped room, a body stirs before the mind does. No alarm. No need. The cough down the hall does the waking, and the footsteps on thin floorboards, and somewhere far off, a whistle already calling names it doesn't know. The mattress is thin. The blanket thinner. Cold presses in through walls built cheap and fast, thrown up for people the city needed but never quite wanted to house. Breakfast is bread, maybe tea, maybe porridge if the week has been kind. There is no time to taste it. Outside, the streets are already moving. Hundreds of shapes in the gray light, all walking the same direction, all carrying the same silence. The silence of people who know exactly what happens if they're late. The city is still dark, but the factory is already calling. Thousands of workers rise from cramped rooms, swallow a quick breakfast, and disappear into the smoke-filled streets. Smoke hangs low over the rooftops like something waiting. And ahead, unmistakable against the skyline, the factory. Its gates stand open. Its doors will not stay that way for long, because in seconds those doors will close. And when they do, the outside world, the sky, the family, the self disappears. What's left is the machine. And the next 12 hours, 14 hours, maybe more, no longer belong to the worker at all. So before the bell rings, before the gates swallow another body whole, ask yourself this. What did it actually feel like to lose an entire day before the sun had even risen? This is not the story of a Victorian factory owner. It is the story of the person standing on the other side of the machine. This is a day in the life of a Victorian factory worker. The room is barely awake, and already it is crowded. For bodies, maybe 5, share a space that was never meant to hold this many lives at once. A curtain, if there is one, is the only wall between a mother dressing and a child pulling on the same shirt he wore yesterday, and the day before that. Privacy is a luxury the poor cannot afford, not in rooms this small, not in a city built for production and not for people. The walls sweat with damp. There is no fire yet. That costs coal, and coal costs money. And money is the one thing this house never has enough of. Breath fogs faintly in the gray light. Somewhere below, water sits stagnant in a shared yard, and the smell of it drifts up through cracked windows, mixing with smoke and unwashed bodies and the sour edge of last night's cooking. Clothes are simple, patched, reused until reuse is no longer possible. A child struggles with a boot 2 sizes too big, inherited from an older sibling who outgrew it, who will outgrow this life far too soon. Breakfast, if it can be called that, is meager bread, maybe dripping if the week has gone well, tea brewed weak to stretch the leaves one more day. There's no time to enjoy it. There's barely time to eat it. And underneath all of this, beneath the coughing, the dressing, the hurried mouthfuls of bread, is a low, constant hum of urgency. Because somewhere across the city, a bell is about to decide everyone's fate. The mother's voice cracks through the room, sharper now. Move. Faster. We cannot be late. Not today. Not ever. Children scramble. A shoe is found. A shirt is buttoned wrong and there's no time to fix it. The door swings open, and the cold outside rushes in like a warning. Outside, the city is already a river of bodies. Manchester, Leeds, Birmingham, Liverpool. Doesn't matter which, they all look the same at this hour. Streets thick with mud. The residue of 1,000 feet moving before you and 1,000 more behind. The air tastes of soot before you've taken your first full breath of it. Above the rooftops, chimneys rise like dark fingers, already exhaling smoke into a sky that hasn't fully brightened. They never stop. Not through the night, not through the winter, not ever. This is a city that burns constantly, that never rests, and neither can the people who feed it. And now the walk sharpens, because everyone here knows the same brutal arithmetic. Lateness has a price. A fine. A missed wage. A door that will not open twice. The workers' legs move faster, weaving between carts and puddles and other desperate bodies chasing the same deadline. For centuries, for generations before this, one time had belonged to the sun, to seasons, to the slow turning of planting and harvest, of light and dark. Nobody rushed toward daylight. Nobody feared the sunrise. But that world is gone, because now time belongs to someone else. It is no longer measured in seasons. It is measured in minutes, in the merciless tick of a clock mounted high above the factory gates, watching, counting, judging every single soul that passes beneath it. Every minute now has a price attached to it. Every second either earns money or costs it. And the worker understands, with a tightening chest, that they are no longer walking toward a job. They are walking toward a machine that owns their entire day. Ahead, the gates loom larger. The crowd compresses, thickens, breath visible in ragged bursts, as the pace quickens into something close to panic. Somewhere in the distance, too close now, the first low groan of the bell begins to stir, like a beast waking from sleep. Faces tighten. Pace breaks into something closer to a run. Nobody speaks. There's no breath to spare for words, only the desperate hammering of feet against packed mud. Only the singular, terrifying thought pounding through every mind in that surging crowd. Don't be late. Don't be late. Don't be late. The gates rise ahead, iron and unyielding, swallowing bodies one after another into the dark mouth of the factory yard. The worker pushes forward, lungs burning, heart hammering, close enough now to see the enormous door still standing open, but not for long. A supervisor's hand rests near them, ready. And then it happens. The bell erupts, sudden, deafening, final. The worker crosses the threshold just as the massive doors begin to swing shut behind them, sealing off the gray morning light, sealing off the outside world entirely. Darkness. Machinery. The overwhelming roar of something vast and merciless coming alive all around them. The door slams shut with a sound like judgment, and in that instant the worker realizes there is no going back now. Whatever waits inside those walls, whatever the next hours demand of their body and mind, they are trapped inside it until the bell decides to let them go. The machines are waking, and the real nightmare hasn't even begun. The doors seal shut, and the first thing that hits isn't a sight. It's a sound, a wall of it, crashing over the senses before the eyes have even adjusted to the gloom. Hundreds of machines all screaming at once. Metal striking metal in a rhythm that never breaks. Belts whipping past at speeds that blur the eye. Gears grinding against gears, endlessly, mercilessly. Somewhere close, a worker shouts a warning, but the words are swallowed whole before they reach anyone. This is not a place built for conversation. It is barely a place built for people. The air is thick with dust, fiber, and heat, pressing down like a second skin. Bodies move through it in practiced mechanical rhythm, spinners feeding thread into roaring frames, weavers locked into the endless clatter of the loom, mill hands hauling and lifting without pause. In other buildings across the city, the same brutal choreography plays out differently. Metal workers hammering beside furnaces that never cool, miners descending into darkness that swallows daylight completely, pottery workers hunched over kilns, match workers handling chemicals that eat quietly at their bodies. Different trades. Same merciless clock. And here is the horror hiding in plain sight. None of this requires thought. It requires repetition. The same motion performed again, and again, and again. 1,000 times before midday. 10,000 before the bell finally rings them free. The body becomes a mechanism inside a larger mechanism, an extension of the very machine it serves. Stop thinking. Stop feeling. Just move and move and move again. Because stopping has a price. Supervisors move through the aisles like predators patrolling territory, eyes scanning for any break in rhythm. Talk without purpose, punished. Slow your pace, punished. Wander from your station even for a breath of air, punished. Fines are extracted for offenses that would seem laughably small anywhere else. A moment's rest can cost wages already stretched to breaking. This isn't simply a workplace with rules. It is a system engineered down to the second, designed to extract every possible ounce of output from every single body inside it. And then, the moment the story turns, the moment the stakes rise higher than exhaustion or discipline ever could. Look closer. Down near the base of the machines, where the gears spin lowest and the danger sits thickest, there are smaller hands. Smaller frames. Children, barely old enough to understand what a full sentence means, crawling beneath monstrous machinery that could crush a grown man in an instant. They are here because they are cheap. Because their small bodies fit into spaces no adult ever could. Because efficiency does not care how old you are, only how useful you can be. A child ties off a broken thread mid-motion, fingers inches from spinning metal that shows no mercy for mistakes. Another carries materials nearly her own size across a floor slick with oil and grime. Another simply cleans, reaching into the guts of a machine that is never fully switched off, never fully safe, while it groans and shudders around tiny trembling hands. There is no classroom waiting for these children, no playground, no stretch of afternoon spent chasing something joyful. Instead, there is only this, the deafening machine, the endless hours, the constant, gnawing tension of knowing that one wrong movement, one instant of exhaustion winning over focus, could change everything in the space of a single heartbeat. Not every factory looked exactly like this. Conditions shifted wildly depending on industry, region, employer, decade. Some workplaces were marginally safer, some employers marginally kinder. But strip away the exceptions, and a brutal truth remains constant across industrial Britain. Dangerous machinery, suffocating hours, poor ventilation thick enough to choke lungs slowly over years, injuries that arrived without warning, and children, real children, not statistics, spending their most fragile years feeding a system that saw them as small, cheap, and disposable. The noise never stops. The rhythm never breaks. Somewhere in this cavern of iron and heat, a worker's hand hesitates for just a fraction of a second too long near a moving belt, and the machine doesn't pause to notice. It never does. It simply continues, hungry, relentless, indifferent to flesh and bone. And that's the truth this chapter leaves hanging in the dark, heavy air of the factory floor. If one small mistake, one instant of fatigue, one child's tired hand reaching a moment too late, is all it takes to change a life forever, how many workers walked out of these factories today exactly as they walked in? By midday, the body has already stopped asking questions. Simply obeys. Hours of repetition have worn the mind into a kind of numb autopilot, arms moving, legs bracing, fingers reaching, long after the exhaustion should have forced them to stop. And still the machine doesn't slow. It doesn't know what midday means. It only knows output. Then finally a pause. Not rest. A pause. Minutes, not hours, carved grudgingly out of an unforgiving schedule. Bread if there's enough of it. Cheese if the week has been kind. A sliver of meat on the rare occasion money allows for such a luxury. It's eaten fast, standing, barely tasted, because the clock is already counting down the seconds until the next shift begins. There is no leisure in this meal. There is only fuel. Just enough to keep a body moving through the second half of a day that refuses to end. And then, without ceremony, without mercy, back to work. Because the machinery doesn't care that you're hungry. It doesn't care that your legs are shaking, that your eyes are burning, that a fever has been building quietly behind your temples since sunrise. It doesn't care if you're sick. It only cares if you're still in position when the next cycle begins. And slowly, cruelly, something begins to happen that the worker barely notices until it's already happened. Their body stops belonging entirely to themselves. It becomes another component in the system, an extension of the machine expected to function exactly like one, without pause, without fault, without complaint. But bodies are not made of iron. The noise that has roared since sunrise is doing something no one warned them about, grinding away at hearing that will never fully return, leaving a persistent ringing that will follow them home tonight and every night after. The dust hanging thick in the air is settling deep into lungs never designed to filter it, seeding a cough that will worsen year after year until breathing itself becomes labor. Muscles ache in ways that sleep can no longer fix. Joints strain under postures held too long. Backs curved unnaturally over machines built for output, not for human anatomy. And then there are the injuries that arrive suddenly, violently, without warning of any kind. A burn from a furnace that flares unexpectedly. A finger caught for half a second too long between grinding metal, gone before the mind even registers the sound. An arm pulled toward a belt moving faster than reflexes can react to. These aren't rare tragedies whispered about once a year. They are a constant looming possibility, present in every single motion, every single hour, every single day inside these walls. Because here is the truth that hangs over every worker like a blade suspended by a fraying thread. One mistake, one instant of exhaustion winning over focus, could change everything. Forever. And in a world without safety nets, without compensation, without guaranteed recovery, An injury isn't simply painful. It's catastrophic. A crushed hand doesn't just mean weeks of agony. It can mean the end of employment altogether. And for a family already balanced on the narrowest edge of survival, one lost wage, one missing income, can be the difference between a hard week and complete ruin. Between a full stomach and an empty one. Between staying in that cramped, damp room and losing it entirely. The stakes were never simply about discomfort. They were about survival itself. And beyond the factory walls, the danger doesn't disappear. It simply changes shape. The city outside is transforming into something the world has never truly seen before. Colossal, powerful, undeniably modern. And also, in many ways, one of the most punishing environments human beings have ever built for themselves. Coal smoke drapes over every rooftop, thick enough to blot out clean air entirely. Housing crams families into spaces built faster than they were ever built safely, walls damp, rooms overflowing. Waterways that once ran clear now carry industrial waste and sewage side by side, feeding disease into neighborhoods that have nowhere else to draw water from. Streets narrow and crowded, thick with horse traffic and human traffic and the relentless clatter of industry that never ever goes quiet. Illness spreads easily in conditions like these. Fevers move from house to house as fast as gossip. A single contaminated well can devastate an entire street within days. And still, the factories keep producing. The chimneys keep burning. The empire keeps expanding outward, fueled by goods now cheaper and more plentiful than ever before in human history. Britain is becoming wealthier by the year. Its cities are becoming symbols of progress the entire world watches in awe. But underneath all of that gleaming industrial triumph lies a much harder, much darker question. One the worker, standing exhausted at their station with burning lungs and aching hands, doesn't have the luxury of time to ask, but perhaps you do. Someone is paying the true cost of all this progress. It isn't the factory owners, watching profits climb from the comfort of distant offices. It isn't the politicians, celebrating industrial triumph in parliamentary halls far from the noise and the smoke. It's the worker. It's the child crawling beneath the machines. It's the family crowded into a single damp room, praying tonight isn't the night illness finds their door. And as the afternoon presses forward, as fatigue deepens and the machinery shows no sign of slowing, one final unbearable question begins to surface, quiet but impossible to ignore. If one single mistake, one moment of exhaustion, is truly all it takes to end everything a family depends on to survive, what happens the moment that mistake finally comes? And then finally it comes. The bell. It cuts through the roar like a blade, and for the first time since sunrise, the machines begin to slow. Belts ease. Gears stutter into stillness. The deafening rhythm that has ruled every second of this day starts to fade into something almost unbearable in its silence. Bodies straighten slowly, painfully, joints protesting hours of unnatural strain. The workers move toward the doors like survivors leaving a battlefield. Dazed, drained, checking without quite meaning to that all their fingers are still there. But stepping through those gates doesn't mean the day is over. Not even close. There's still the walk home, legs burning with every step, lungs still coated in dust that refuses to clear. There's food to gather, if there's money left to gather it with. There are clothes to mend for tomorrow, small hands to wash, children to feed before exhaustion drags them into a sleep too heavy for hunger to interrupt. There's mending, cleaning, cooking. An entire second shift waiting quietly at home, invisible to anyone who has never lived it. And tomorrow the bell rings again. And the entire brutal cycle begins exactly where it left off. Same hours, same danger, same aching, hollowed-out exhaustion waiting on the other side of a 5 o'clock morning. For a long time this was simply how things were. Unquestioned, unchallenged, accepted because what other choice existed? But something is beginning to shift. Quietly, in cramped rooms not unlike the one this worker calls home, conversations are starting to happen. Whispered at first, then spoken aloud, then shouted. Workers who once endured in silence are starting to ask a question that terrifies the very system built to exploit them. What if this doesn't have to be normal? Trade unions begin forming, small and fragile at first, then growing bolder as more voices join. Reformers step forward, some from within the working class itself, some from outside it, demanding change, demanding accountability, demanding that someone finally answer for the injuries, the exhaustion, the children broken by machines built for profit, not people. And the system fights back. Employers resist. Fines increase. Organizers are threatened, sometimes fired, sometimes worse. But the pressure doesn't disappear, it builds. Strikes erupt in factories not unlike this one. Entire workforces refusing to move, refusing to feed the machines another single day until something changes. Streets that were once filled only with exhausted workers trudging silently to their stations begin filling with something else entirely. Crowds, voices, signs, anger sharpened into purpose. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, legislation begins to crack open the system from the outside. Restrictions on child labor, limits on working hours. The earliest, most fragile protections against the very dangers this worker has faced today begin appearing on paper, then in law, then eventually inside the factories themselves. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen easily. Every single protection one is fought for, resisted, delayed, and finally forced into existence by people who refuse to accept that survival should cost this much. Because underneath everything, the strikes, the legislation, the growing unions, lies one revolutionary question the system was never designed to answer. How much should a human being be expected to sacrifice, simply to earn a single day's wage? That question doesn't disappear once asked. It spreads. It grows teeth. It becomes the foundation for a battle that will stretch across generations, for shorter hours, for safer machinery, for children returned to classrooms instead of factory floors, for wages that reflect survival rather than exploitation, for workers finally recognized as human beings rather than components inside a production line. The factory doesn't vanish. Not yet. Maybe not ever entirely. But it begins slowly to bend under pressure it was never built to withstand. And that bending, however small, however painfully slow, becomes the first fragile thread connecting this exhausted worker's brutal, unforgiving day to something the future will eventually call normal weekends. Lunch breaks, safety regulations, protections written into law because someone somewhere refused to stay silent any longer. The modern workplace wasn't handed down from above. It wasn't gifted by kind employers or generous governments. It was clawed out, painfully, by ordinary people who decided that survival shouldn't require sacrificing everything. Tonight, this worker doesn't know any of this. They don't know the strikes that are coming. They don't know the laws that will eventually bear the invisible fingerprints of workers just like them. They only know exhaustion, and the ache in their hands, and the quiet relief of finally closing their eyes. But somewhere out there, closer than anyone inside that factory could possibly imagine, the first spark of resistance is already catching. And once it catches, nothing about this system will ever be the same again. Late at night, the house falls quiet again. The same thin mattress. The same cold room. The same body, now aching in places it didn't ache this morning, finally allowed to rest. Outside, the city has gone as still as it ever does. Chimneys cooling, streets emptying, the machines behind those factory gates finally silent for a few short hours. Tomorrow the bell will ring again. 5 o'clock. Dark streets. The same walk, the same doors, the same roar waiting to swallow another day whole. The worker closes their eyes without knowing something extraordinary. That this exhausting, repetitive, unforgiving cycle is quietly reshaping the entire future of human life. Wake up. Go to work. Take a break. Finish. Go home. Sleep. Repeat. A rhythm so ordinary today that we barely notice it. But it wasn't always ordinary. It had to be built, and it was built here inside rooms like this one by bodies like this one pushed to their absolute limit. This worker didn't invent the modern working day alone. But through every exhausted shift, every injury survived, every whispered conversation that would one day become a strike, a union, a law, they helped forge it, piece by painful piece. And that might be the most unsettling part of this entire story. Because tomorrow morning, when your alarm cuts through the silence and rushes you out of bed, when you glance at the clock during your break, counting down the minutes until you're free again, when you feel that familiar tightening urgency of don't be late, you are, in some strange and undeniable way, still living inside the world that Victorian bell first rang into existence. The machines have gone quiet. The factories have changed shape, changed names, changed entire industries. The clothes are different. The buildings gleam instead of choke on smoke. But the clock never stopped. It simply followed us, into offices, into warehouses, into the pockets of nearly everyone alive today, ticking quietly in the background of lives that still, in some form, orbit around it. And that raises a question far more dangerous than anything we've uncovered so far in this story. If the system that once broke bodies inside Victorian factories still shapes how we live, work, and measure our worth today, how much of what we call normal is actually something we never truly chose? If that question unsettles you even a little, imagine what happens when we trace it further. Because this is only the beginning of how the modern world was quietly built on the backs of people history forgot to thank. Subscribe and stay close. Hidden Origins is only getting started.
This video presents a fictionalized narrative inspired by real historical conditions during the Victorian Industrial Revolution. The worker depicted is not a real individual, but a composite representation created to illustrate documented working conditions of the era. All imagery is AI-generated for illustrative and educational purposes and does not depict real photographs, real people, or real historical events. While the story is fictionalized, it is grounded in historical research on Victorian factory labor, child labor practices, working hours, industrial city conditions, and the labor reform movements of the 19th century. Conditions varied significantly by industry, region, employer, and specific time period. Not every factory or worker experienced events exactly as portrayed here. This content is intended for historical and educational engagement, not as an exhaustive or universally representative account of the Industrial Revolution.